All right, let's.
Welcome to United Opposition with Scott and
Marshall.
Marshall, that's right. Marshall was able to join us last week, and I was kind of on by myself, so now he's going to react to what I said all by myself, so this might be a lot of Marshall today. We'll see what's going on. Here we go. Hey, so we're here on our fairly new time right now at 5:45. I think we're going to be able to go a little bit earlier next week, Marshall. Maybe 5:30. I think.
Yeah, at least, yeah, probably.
Yeah, so join us next week at 5:30. That's where we're going to be going to. We're trying to play with some times because some scheduling conflicts, and we're trying to work this out. But it looks like we're good. I wanted to stick with 5:45 today because that's what we told everybody last week, and now I think we're going to go to probably 5:30 starting next week. So right there during your rush hour home, you can just put your phone in your car, put it on. You can listen to us and talk about all of the things that are happening in the world and all the things that are affecting us. So, like I said, last week I was here on my own. I cannot believe I talked for 30 minutes by myself. It's not nearly as fun, Marshall. I will tell you that. As much as I talk over you and try to hog the airways when you and I are on, when I'm completely by myself, it's not nearly as fun. It's way more fun to have somebody to bounce off of and talk. So just to recap everybody, what happened last week is that Marshall and I got into a conversation online where we're talking about where he was asking me what is your red line for Trump? What things does he have to cross before you'll say that's a red line, I no longer support him? And I felt that it was a discussion. I felt it was a question that was worth a discussion, not just a headline, not just a single answer. So I wanted to be able to discuss it. We weren't able to last week, so I just kind of went on by myself and gave my answer. Marshall, you saw what I said. I've got my list of things that I have here just in case I need to reference it or anything. So I'm going to let you kind of lead now with this. I'm hoping maybe you have some notes and some things specifically you want to address topic by topic as I said it. I'm not quite sure how you wanted to do that. I don't want to basically go through all of it again myself. People already heard it. I want to kind of go into your reaction of it. And how's that sound?
That sounds great. Wait, you're not responding? You're not replying?
What?
I'm making a joke, Scott. I'm making a joke about
nothing.
Your tendency to bounce off. I do want to, before I get going, before we dive into this, I do want to suggest to people that they follow 511 Media on Facebook and on YouTube because I have several friends who are watching this on my Facebook profile, on my feed, and they will often comment on my feed, but then those comments don't come into us. They don't come into the studio, right, where we can put them on the screen and react to them more or less in real time.
And I need to apologize real quick before you go any further. I'm kind of producing this again. We don't have a producer today. They got it set up, so I might be distracted on the computer trying to pull things up. If you see me looking off, that's what's happening.
Sure. But yeah, I want to suggest to people, how do they find 511 Media?
On YouTube or on Facebook, Instagram as well.
Yeah, and then comment there. That way we can put your comments in without me having to look over here all the time.
Assuming I know how to pull the comments in.
Yeah. If
I'm in the right place.
We can't. Yeah. We don't always pull all the comments in. We can't, but we'll pull in what we can. Particularly if it's relevant to what we're arguing about. So,
I don't know if I know how to pull them in, and I don't know if I'm looking in the right place to find them. So I apologize ahead of time if we don't get your comments in.
Right. They should appear under the comments tab that you should see on your right.
Somebody give us a test comment. Just say hi so I can see. Just say hi on the 511 stream. That way I can see if a comment comes up, and then we'll put it on the screen if I know how to do that. I think all I have to do is click it and it goes on the screen, but we'll see.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yep. All right. So basically, I mean, I was really obstinate with you insisting on, I want to know what your red line is. And
Conversation
that's getting,
called it childish.
well, you call it what you like, but you have, sometimes it may be that you and I see this differently. You see this as kind of normal politics as usual, whereas I see these as very extraordinary times where the threat to both the republic and to many individuals is potentially existential. So we're mismatched, in our levels of concern and anxiety here. What you would call Trump TDS, Trump derangement syndrome or something. Definitely, like so.
I
But
feel like you are, because Trump seems to preoccupy your entire existence, at least online, and it doesn't mean
right.
you simply.
That's where we interface,
Yeah,
because I'm putting it out on the socials, but I actually have another 23 and a half hours of the day where I'm doing things that are not always Trump things. But
yeah.
yes, I am communicating because I want to connect with friends, family, and neighbors who are also sort of in this resistance, if you will, and not sure what to do with themselves. Because there's a lot of people I know who are very deeply concerned, and their anxieties are much like mine or even greater. It may be that they're trans persons, or they have children who identify as non-binary or something, or perhaps they have a career or a job. They somehow feel targeted by the Trump presidency and the administration. And I think those concerns are valid, because in my opinion, in my view, Trump has targeted opposition to him. And I think some of that targeting is unwarranted and inappropriate. But I don't want to dive off into that. But yeah, I think there's a lot of legitimate concern out there, and time will tell whether we're simply hysterical or whether we have a legitimate concern here. Um, I think that the history is coming down in a very troubling way. Others might not. You think we're overreacting, and okay, but time will tell. But I want to know what the red lines are, and I think this is a conversation that we have to have with ourselves. And this is with every president. I don't care if it's Obama or Biden or Harris or Clinton or Reagan, Bush 1, Bush 2, Trump 1, Trump 2, whatever. Every time
Sorry.
yeah, I know, right? Whoever it may be.
On that point, have you ever asked for these red lines for any of those other presidents you said, or has it just come because of Trump?
Yes, I have, and I have not been the best ally, particularly of Democratic presidents. And frankly, I couldn't be more appalled and tired.
You publicly red lines for presidents and publicly demanded people say what the red line is for their president before Trump.
I have publicly made statements criticizing past policies by past administrations, particularly
That's not what I asked.
Okay. No, because no administration has rang the alarm bells quite like the Trump
administration. For you.
Every administration, for me, but every administration at some level or another has caused some kind of concern to me, including the Obama and the Biden administrations on various things. So I have my concerns, but yes, the Trump administration is really dialed up to 11. But I do think that no matter who it is and when it is, you need to ask yourself, what is your red line? Let's say, for example, that Trump is out of office, and in 2026 or whenever it may be, Democrats just roar into government and they go,
28.
Well, I'm a bit of an optimist here. But in 28, I mean, when they come in and they completely reverse everything, I have to have a conversation with myself. What if we get some radical leftists who we don't even know about? I'm talking about somebody who makes AOC look like a puppy dog, right? And Bernie Sanders looked like just some grumpy old kook.
Well, I know where you're going with this, but let me hit it off. It wouldn't matter if they got more than 50% of the vote like Trump did. Trump has a mandate from the people.
All right, so okay, well, it does not matter.
No.
But the point is once they're in office, I would have to ask, what are my red lines? You know, are there red lines beyond which I would not support an administration that I would otherwise be very enthusiastic?
What you have. That's why I went on the show last week and told everybody who's a conservative, everyone who's a conservative on the right, you need to make your line. You need to make your line. And then I made what I feel are some pretty reasonable lines. And I was hoping you would be commenting on those, asking me questions about those, what those lines were and your comments on those. Because I think you and I are in absolute agreement. And here's the thing. I wasn't before. Your incessant asking of that question online made me look and say, you know what? This isn't answer. This is not the forum to answer it. You were like, give me your answer right now. Give me your answer right now. It's like, you're not actually looking for an answer. You're looking for a headline or a quote. I want to talk about what is an actual answer. That's why I wanted to take it onto the show. But I felt in that conversation, it's a reasonable ask that all of us should have, that we should look and say, you know what would be the red line? So you and I are in agreement on there. Do you agree with where my red lines are?
Well, Scott, I have to confess, I did listen to it, but I slept 7 times since then. I do think that just at the 30,000 foot view, you need to have red lines, because either you are an American who cares for the Republic itself and the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, or you are instead something else where you are politically aligned, or you are aligned to a person before you are aligned to the documents of the Founding Fathers. Now, look, I understand that the Founding Fathers were problematic. Yeah. I understand that the slavery was legal, women didn't have rights, and so on. But nonetheless, they set into motion these ideas that eventually, over time, over 200 years, we came to say, you know what, there are certain ideals, they should be available to everyone. And to me, that's what it means to be American. It doesn't matter if you're male or female, white or black or whatever, rich or poor.
Move forward. You and I are in agreement. You and I are in agreement on this. I was hoping that we'd be able to talk specifically about these. So I'll have to read. I have them right here. I'll have to
use your notes. That's fine.
I'll use your notes and read them back. But I also want to say that the position you're taking, I think, is a bit extreme, simply because it's Trump. Because I feel that living as a person in California, I feel I've been living already in a government that doesn't care about certain constitutional rights for my entire lifetime. That I feel that there's some very clearly written constitutional rights specifically just for this one topic I'm going to engage in right now is the Second Amendment, that it clearly says shall not be infringed. But living in California, the Californian government is constantly trying to infringe on that, constantly not caring what the Constitution says, and it's constantly trying to throw everything on the wall, things that are clearly unconstitutional, but they're still trying, and they're still. So I've been living my entire life in a state of government that does not care, literally does not care about my constitutional rights, but you know. That's what we live in. You're kind of showing, you're kind of treating Trump like this is a unique thing that's happened only with Trump. It's like, no, this has happened a lot across the board, and we do need to find out what our red lines are. We do need to discuss it, but this is not unique to Trump. I feel I live in a state where my constitutional rights are constantly being stripped. Right now, the state of California is trying to pass a law to ban, they're calling it the Glock ban, to ban every firearm that has this certain type of feature, which is the striker fire feature. Not because there's something wrong with that, but because the guns could be modified to be illegal. Somebody could buy an item that's already illegal and could illegally modify the gun to turn it into an automatic. And so they're trying to ban the most common firearm in the world, the most common handgun, the most common style, the safest kind of handgun style, just because you could possibly turn it into something illegal. So they want to ban that. That's what the state of California is trying to do right now, completely unconstitutional. This stuff is happening more often than you're seeing it now because it's Trump, but this is not unique to Trump. This is not unique to these times.
The notion of taking a pistol with 9 rounds in it and turning it into a miniature Uzi
Yeah, it's ridiculous. People
did anything with it, you know.
The large capacity magazines are it's already illegal to do that, but they say, but the gun, it can be done. And since you can possibly modify it, we want to ban that gun. And it's absolutely a complete infringement on the rights of gun owners. And that's happening right. That's probably likely to pass in California and then have to go through the courts and go through the system and then be struck down eventually, because most of the laws that California, but that doesn't stop these politicians from trying to infringe on our rights. So this is not uniquely Trump. All right. So I'd like to ask for you, what are your red lines for the governorship? All right. When are you gonna not support? But you probably don't support him anyway. So let's start with the first one here. So I started with some obvious ones, red lines for me. If Trump makes it onto the 2028 ballot, I will not be supporting him.
That's right. I remember that, and I was very encouraged to hear that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think we have to agree. We have to. Term limits should be enshrined at every level. I don't care how popular senator or representative so and so are. Even if it means that some of my favorite political personalities cannot run again, they shouldn't run again.
Yeah.
They need to go out and get a job like everyone else, or retire, or whatever. But I do think that the lack of term limits, especially in the House and Senate and other legislatures across, state legislatures and governorships and such, I think that's a scourge on the American people. We have people who spend more time in the House of Representatives, which is our lower legislative chamber, than people spend in the House of Lords, which is the upper legislative chamber in England. And you have to be born into the House of Lords. You have to inherit your seat in the House of Lords. So it's ridiculous that we have elected representatients in our lower chamber who are seated longer than some people serve in the House of Lords. Term limits.
Yeah, they're important. Yeah. Now again, if they're trying, like if there's lawyers who are going to try to say, well, let's see if we can get them on the ballot. You know what? How is that any different than what California is doing with gun laws to you?
Right.
Yeah. Because it seems pretty clear to me the Constitution says no more than 2 terms. They're going to try to say, well, it means 2 consecutive, whatever. They're going to try to find a way around it and do all that. But it also seems very clear to me, shall not be infringed. And it doesn't stop people from doing that. So I'm not, if they're trying to, I'm like, okay, well, whatever. You can throw whatever you want up against the wall and see if it sticks. I'm not, if it actually happens, then no, I'm not going to support it. I'm not going to support him on there, and I'm not going to vote for him if he is on the 2028 ballot.
Yeah. Well, just to make my opinion on this particular issue clear, under no pretext should arms and ammunition be surrendered, and any attempt to disarm the workers must be frustrated by force if necessary. That's Karl Marx. And that's how you can tell if you're dealing with just a mainstream Democrat or a true leftist or socialist or communist even. Because the real left is actually pro-gun, because we recognize that that's the last bastion of defense, which is an armed people, armed workers in particular.
And I know you don't, and I'm not necessarily trying to challenge you on that topic. I'm just trying to bring it up as a comparison topic. That
sure. I do think there's a difference. And in particular is, yes, I'm opposed to the attempt to take away your property rights. And to disarm us, because I think it could be the start of something more sinister, because once the public is no longer armed, then the government becomes a totalitarian power, or at least
government's no longer polite.
Right. But I also see that there are direct attacks on certain segments of our population, as well as people who are here illegally. I still think that even if you're here illegally, you are entitled to things like due process. You're entitled to dignity.
Coming up, but I want to finish this first one.
Oh, okay.
What's your opinion on my stance and where my red line is?
Regarding the Trump in 2028, yes. I agree with you entirely.
Okay. Would you have the same line, or would your line be a different place? Are you no longer? Has he already crossed that line for you in that topic?
When Trump originally ran for office, and he won the nomination, I was interested in what he had to say. I was willing to support him even at that point.
Mhm.
I was open to listening to what he had to say, and I was open to even voting for him. But in his original inaugural speech, way back in like 2015, I remember this very clearly. He said, "Only I can fix, the economy or the problems that plague this nation." And when he made that "only I" statement, that was it. Because to me, that was a ginormous red flag. Because that's the way dictators and totalitarians talk. That is not the way I expect a president to talk.
Okay,
I
so,
would expect him to say, "Together we can solve these problems."
and yet
He
again,
wasn't speaking that way.
I don't find that as a red flag because I feel he's speaking as a CEO, and I feel he's for better or for worse. I know you and I disagree on a country shouldn't be ran by like a corporation, but I see him saying that as I'm going to be the CEO, and I'm the only CEO that can come in and do what needs to be done to turn this company around.
Sure.
So I didn't see that, and I don't see that as a red line of this is a dictator. I see it as this is business language. He's using business language.
Well, either way, it was a red line for me, and that was the end of that. And I have not supported him ever since. When he got elected the first time, I was nonetheless cautiously optimistic that he could bring his expertise as in the world of construction and development into the Oval Office, and that yeah, I think all he needed to do to be one of the greatest presidents that America has ever had is to take his expertise in construction and development and put that into building up our national infrastructure, build roads, build railroads, expand airports and capacity, build power facilities, all of the things that we consider infrastructure. And I would also consider things like education and healthcare infrastructure. I know that's pushing it. But if you do these things that make business and commerce and more efficient, that makes getting around easier and doing business and commerce easier, I think that's what it takes to make America great. I think it was very simple for him to do that, and instead he went off the rails. He attacked the Obama administration and policies and spent his time obsessed with that. And now he seems to be obsessed with all these other things, in particular, seeking revenge against people who tried to prosecute him for crimes for which he was convicted. 34.
So we'll jump to that one. I will have one here about immigration. We'll come back to it. That was my second one, but I'll jump to the third one. Arrests for political opposition who break the laws. If the people are breaking the law, then I have that's not an immunity to. Well, I'm in opposition to the current president, but so you cannot prosecute me even if I'm breaking the law. That's ridiculous. I think if they're breaking the law, I don't care if they're if they're opposition. If what they did was breaking the law, then they should be prosecuted. And I think that is what's happening. That the argument he's making is that the way he was treated was illegal, and now he's prosecuting those who broke the law. And I believe that's what he's doing. But when it goes from people who aren't, if it transitions to if you're part of the opposition and have not broken any laws, we're still going to arrest you. Obviously, that's where I draw a line. But I don't believe that's what's happening. I believe it's people who broke the laws, and he's not letting that the fact that they're his opposition keep him like everybody else before. I was like, well, I don't want to get into this touchy subject because it looks like I'm persecuting people who are opposition. You know, if they broke the law, prosecute them. If they broke the law, prosecute them. I don't care what side of the opposition, what side of the wall they're on, the fence or on, whatever you want to call it. If they broke the law, prosecute them. If they didn't break the law and you're still prosecuting simply because they're on the opposition, that's where I draw my red line.
Right.
Do you think he's gone there? Do you think he's just prosecuting people who are in opposition, or is it? Or so you're saying the people he's prosecuting have no criminality at all?
I'm not going to argue that one way or the other because I'm not a judge. But here's the deal: if there is reason to believe that someone has broken the law, I don't care which side of the aisle they prefer, they should be prosecuted.
Okay, good.
But the prosecution should not be all on one side or the other. They should be. The criteria for prosecution is: do we have what is it really just cause to believe that you broke the law? What's the term for that? What's the term for that?
Oh, you said just cause, isn't it?
No, there's actually if they can come into your home without a warrant, what's that called?
If there's I know what you're talking about. Extenuating circumstances.
No, that's not it.
Come into, well, that's what you were talking about. They can come into your home without a warrant if there's extenuating circumstances.
Right, but there's actually a term for that, and it's like literally in the Bill of Rights. But anyway, well, there we are. But yeah, if you believe someone has broken the law, even if it's a judge, even if it's a legislator, even if it's a president, whatever, they should be prosecuted. You file the charges, you prosecute them. But you also do this in a way that is appropriate and dignified. And you also have to acknowledge that not all laws are necessarily constitutional. Sometimes laws get passed that are later ruled to be unconstitutional. Well, because they are. Just because the law's passed doesn't mean it's constitutional. And I also think that there are things like human rights that I think outweigh all of your national laws. To me, if you're a Christian law comes above and beyond any political law, period, end of sentence. Period, end of sentence. Even if it means you're going to be persecuted, even if it means you get fed to the lion, Christian law is the highest law. That's it, right? And I think you'd agree, right? Period, end of sentence. That's it. There's done, right? But below that, where Christian law allows you as an individual to have your political beliefs and practices and so on, there's also, I think, human law, where human rights and stuff. And I am very concerned with how the administration has enforced its laws in ways that I think maybe I can't guarantee or say for sure, but are probably contrary to human law, human rights. Then, of course, you have your national laws, and that's a purely political affair. But I do think as a nation, we agree that there should be due process. We agree that there should be dignity. And even if we agree that you deserve the death penalty, there's still rules about how we treat you and how we carry out the death penalty. And I think that should apply.
And I get it. I think you and I probably disagree on what that level of dignity is.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I don't mind if you have to wear pink underwear and a pink jumpsuit and be fed bologna sandwiches and water while you're in prison. You know what? If the person you put into the ground can't even enjoy those things. So I don't really care if you have to suffer through that stuff. So I don't. There are criminals that the level of dignity and how they're treated doesn't really concern me.
Right. There's room for disagreement and discussion, and that's where United Opposition comes in. Yeah. We actually explore some of these topics. Why are you okay with a pink jumpsuit and bologna sandwiches, but I'm like, hey, they should get tuna every other day or something. I mean, there's a reasonable.
That's why.
Right. So there's room for disagreement. There is, however, a limit to, because one of the things that you kept going back to is just keep talking. In the main, I agree, but there is a point beyond which conversation has to stop, because the conversation itself is facilitating the oppression or the badness, the evilness, whatever it may be. So that is of concern to me.
And my problem is where people draw that line. This is why we're talking about our red lines. I think you draw that line so far ahead of actual problems that you're part of the problem by stopping communication and stopping conversations, because you're drawing that line way too far ahead, and you're not allowing people to have that conversation because you're saying, no, you agree with him, and I know that he's a Nazi or whatever. If you agree with him, then there's no reason for me to talk to you. You're drawing that line way too far. I think you're drawing that line way too far ahead. I think you're being driven by constantly allowing yourself to have this input. Like you are so inundated with everything that Trump does every single day. You post articles like things I never would have saw, or it's like every day you're posting. It's like, give it a break, back off just a little bit, because you're allowing yourself to get deranged. So you keep pushing that line farther forward to where you no longer want to talk to people. And I think you're unreasonably doing that. Because that line that you say it ends up being such an arbitrary line that you should err on the side of talking.
Yeah, I would say just scroll through Google News, which is relatively unbiased. It's just the news, the headlines. But as you scroll through, it's a horror show.
Why do I need that every day?
Because you need to pay attention to what's happening to your nation.
Right, but what it's doing to you, I'm not saying don't pay attention to it. I'm saying, why do I need it every day? Because what it's happening to you, Marshall, is it's tossing you back and forth on the sea. You're tossed over here, you're being tossed over there, you're being tossed over here, and you're sounding, you're coming on there and say, see, all you people who said that he was going to bring down the price of eggs, look at the price of eggs. And a week later, the price of eggs are actually down. And now you got to be like, yeah, well, something else. Here's this other thing. And then a week later, that will be irrelevant too. You're reacting so fast that you're not giving things time to develop, and you're losing your own credibility because you're allowing yourself to be tossed back and forth on the waves.
Yeah. So here's the thing, right? You know, you can dialogue with the woodcutter up until the point they take up the axe. If you wait until the woodcutter begins to swing the axe, you've dialogued too long, and now you're doomed. And that's the problem with any totalitarian government, whether it's right or left. It's a known issue with fascism. And I'm sure
it's thinking like that the California politicians are saying, you know what? It's just, you know what? That gun can be turned into something illegal, so we just need to make sure you don't have it. Long before any of us ever committed any crimes with it, before any of us ever did anything, they're willing. People like you are willing to take away rights based on what could happen.
No, I don't want to take away rights. I want to
become part of
the
crime
government from taking away human rights and life. You know, again, the enemy is not you; it's the system or the government that is going to come after you. You know, once the woodcutter takes up the axe, he has indicated, he has crossed a bright line, which indicates that he is he has clear intention of cutting down the tree. The tree would be foolish to continue dialogue beyond that point. You know, the tree needs to drop the branch, not continue dialogue while the guy starts to hack away. That's silly. So there is a point beyond which dialogue no longer serves the oppressed, but serves the oppressor. Mm-hmm. And we've seen this in fascist regimes, but I'm pretty sure it's also a feature of leftist authoritarian regimes, where the usurper or tyrants or whatever, the future tyrants are going to say, we want a seat at the table, we want a dialogue, let's just talk. But all the time, really all they're saying is nice doggy, nice doggy, nice doggy, until they can get their hand around a stick, and then they're going to whack it.
I get it.
You know, and so where do you draw that line? Where do you say, okay, this is enough, this is enough?
I draw the line.
And that's hard.
Action. Hard. When I see actual action, not what could potentially happen, because I don't want to be judged on either. I again, that might come from some training. Like, I know, if I think you're a threat to me, I cannot just shoot you. You have to actually have the gun in your hand. You have to actually have the weapon. You have to actually be moving towards me. You have to be taking the actual action. I can't, if I see an axe next to you as a tree, I can't just stomp you. If once you take your swing and that's in mid swing, now I need to defend myself. That's when the red line is. For me, outside of that action, I believe taking action against someone before they take action is immoral.
I agree with you, but the problem is, how do you judge that? You know, how do you judge that when you're looking at a nation and its politics and the machinations
on me,
politicians?
I would really like you to go back and watch and see specifically what I said, because I was pretty specific on those things. I was pretty specific in saying, when I see, like, I need to see this, it needs to be policy. When they say this is now going to be policy, when they say when they're going, like, deportation, we got to go off because we're at 33 minutes already. But it was when I see it say the policy now is this, the official policy is we stop brown people in their car and ask for papers. That's the policy. Like, you're gonna have people that do that, and let's prosecute against that. You're gonna have strays that do that. You're gonna have people like, hey, we know this person. We've already had on charge. They've already gone through the process. Now we need to find them. Or, hey, they have a criminal record, or they get stopped for doing a crime, and in the process of dealing with them after they've committed a crime, it's found out that they need to be deported. That's what. But if it's just the policy now is, if they look like they should be deported, stop them and check for papers. That's a red line. That's no, you can't make that a policy. Mm-hmm. That's a very clear red line that I think is what we should have on there. Not, well, I think that they could do this, therefore they've crossed the line. That's what I'm trying to get away from.
Right. But there are other red lines, such as, do we allow a certain person to express their humanity, or to be what they believe they should be, and you and I think we'll have some disagreement there. We will have some
Absolutely.
broad agreement
Yeah.
on like at what point certain things should
And
be
there-
allowed and to which
So as
extent it
far
should
as
be
they can
carried.
violate my daughter's rights.
Right. But again, as individuals, we're going to have differing opinions on this matter. But the bottom line is, I think we agree that there do need to be red lines.
Yep.
The red lines need to apply, especially when the government or that you like, the policies that you like, the people that you like hold
Yep.
power. Because that is how you avoid becoming one of them should they become evil or corrupt, and you protect yourself from participating in the corruption. Because if you go too far down that road, you're going to be lumped in with them, and it's not pretty. It's not good.
Yeah.
So, just saying.
Well, there we are. It's been 35 minutes. I didn't see any comments pop up, so I apologize if your comments came up and I didn't see them. I may not be knowing what I'm doing here, but again, 5:30 next week. We will be here Tuesday at 5:30, and we'll see week to week, but it looks like that's probably going to be our new time, hopefully. And this has been United Opposition with Scott and Marshall. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next time. God bless.
Bye.
Yeah, bye for